Football has always been a violent game, but every once in a while a player comes along who takes that violence to another level. These are the guys who made grown men hesitate before lining up, the ones who changed the way opponents slept the night before a game. Some of them crushed quarterbacks with hits so brutal they're still replayed today. Others ran through defenders like they were made of paper. And a few? They were so intense that even their own teammates admitted being afraid of them. But here's the thing, this list isn't just about legendary talent, it's about the fear factor, the intimidation, and the kind of presence that made entire stadiums go silent when these players stepped on the field. And don't go anywhere, because at the very end, there's a surprise name on this list that you'll never see coming. A player whose reputation was so fierce even years after retiring, he's still remembered as one of the most terrifying figures the NFL has ever seen. So let's dive in the 10 most terrifying players in NFL history. Ray Lewis wasn't just a linebacker, he was the heartbeat of the Baltimore Ravens and one of the most intimidating figures the NFL has ever seen. From the moment he stepped on the field, you could feel his presence. The pre-game dances, the fiery speeches, the way he locked eyes with opponents, it was psychological warfare before the first snap was even taken. And once the game started, good luck. Lewis had a reputation for delivering bone-rattling hits that made wide receivers think twice about running across the middle. Quarterbacks admitted they adjusted their reads just to avoid him. He wasn't the biggest or the fastest, but his instincts were razor sharp and his aggression was unmatched. Of course, part of his legend came from controversy. In 2000, Lewis was caught up in a high-profile murder trial. He was ultimately acquitted, but the whispers never fully went away. For some, that cloud of mystery made him even more terrifying, like he wasn't just playing football, he was playing for something bigger. By the end of his career, Ray Lewis had secured 2 Super Bowl rings, a Hall of Fame jacket, and a reputation as the kind of player you never wanted to see lined up across from you. But as scary as Lewis was, he wasn't the only linebacker who kept offensive players awake at night. Because up next is a man who changed the game forever. If Ray Lewis was the general, then Lawrence Taylor was the wrecking ball. Simply put, LT didn't just play linebacker, he redefined it. Before Taylor, linebackers were supposed to tackle and cover. After Taylor, they were unleashed weapons. His speed off the edge was unreal, his strength overwhelming, and his hits. They weren't just tackles, they were collisions that changed careers. The most infamous example came in 1985 when Taylor broke Joe Theismann's leg on national television. The hit was so violent that fans, players, even the announcers were left in shock. And the scary part? For LT, that was just another play. What made him terrifying wasn't just the physical damage, though there was plenty of that. It was the psychological factor. Opponents admitted they feared him before the game even began. Quarterbacks would rush throws, offensive linemen would lose sleep, and entire playbooks were rewritten just to try and slow him down. Off the field, Taylor's wild lifestyle kept him in the headlines. Suspensions, arrests, and controversies followed him throughout his career. But on Sundays, none of it mattered. He was chaos in a helmet, a one-man storm, and one of the few players who truly forced the NFL to change how the game was played. And while Taylor terrorized quarterbacks, the next man on this list brought fear to everyone, every single snap. Long before the NFL cleaned up its rulebook, Dick Butkus built a reputation as the meanest man in football. Playing middle linebacker for the Chicago Bears in the 1960s and 70s, Butkus was the definition of old-school violence. He didn't just tackle you, he tried to bury you. Players described him as a predator who hunted the ball carrier like prey, and once he got his hands on you, the play was over in the most painful way possible. Butkus wasn't shy about playing dirty either. Eye gouging, late hits, and crushing tackles that would draw instant penalties today were all part of his arsenal back then. Opponents admitted that even before the opening kickoff, they were already scared of him. One lineman famously said that the worst part of facing Butkus wasn't the hits. It was knowing they were coming, and there was nothing you could do to stop them. With 8 Pro Bowls, 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards, and a Hall of Fame career, Butkus didn't just dominate, he set the standard for defensive intimidation. But if Butkus was a predator, the next guy on this list looked like something out of a horror movie, and he made sure you felt every bit of it. If you looked up intimidation in the NFL dictionary, you'd probably see Jack Lambert's toothless grin staring back at you. As the anchor of the Pittsburgh Steelers' legendary steel curtain defense in the 1970s, Lambert wasn't just tough, he was downright frightening. At 6'4" and barely over 200 pounds, he looked almost skinny for a linebacker. That only added to his wild, unhinged image. And when he hit you, you knew it. Lambert played every snap with a chip on his shoulder. He barked at opponents, shoved linemen twice his size, and treated quarterbacks like targets. His presence alone was enough to throw teams off their game. Teammates loved him, opponents Opponents feared him, and fans knew he'd do anything to protect Pittsburgh's dynasty. One moment that captured his personality came during Super Bowl X, when a Cowboys player shoved Steelers kicker Roy Gorilla after a missed kick. Lambert stormed in, slammed the offender to the turf, and let the entire league know that nobody messed with his team. Lambert's missing teeth, intense glare, and no-nonsense approach made him one of the NFL's most intimidating figures. But if you thought linebackers were scary, wait until you hear about the defensive back who turned tackling into a weapon. Before there were rules to protect receivers, there was Night Train Lane, the defensive back who turned tackling into an art form of pure violence. Playing in the 1950s and 60s, Lane was a nightmare in the secondary. He wasn't just intercepting passes, though. He still holds the rookie record with 14 picks in a single season. He was punishing anyone who dared cross his path. His signature move was the infamous Night Train necktie, a clothesline tackle so vicious that the league eventually banned it. Wide receivers described it as being hit by a moving train, and that's exactly how Lane got his nickname. What made him so terrifying was that he combined brute force with incredible instincts, meaning he could both shut down your best receiver and send them limping off the field in the same game. Night Train Lane's legacy is etched not only in highlight reels, but also in the NFL rulebook. His hits were so brutal they literally forced the league to change the way defense was played. But if Lane terrorized receivers, the next man on this list struck fear into defenders, the kind of running back who made grown men look like they didn't even belong on the field. When people talk about the greatest running back of all time, Jim Brown's name is always at the top, but what often gets overlooked is just how terrifying he was to play against. Standing 6'2" and weighing over 230 pounds, Brown was a freak of nature in the 1950s and 60s. He had the size of a linebacker, the speed of a sprinter, and the mindset of someone who refused to be stopped. Defenders said tackling Brown felt like getting hit by a truck. He didn't dodge contact, he welcomed it. Play after play, he lowered his shoulder and ran straight through would-be tacklers, leaving bodies scattered behind him. There are stories of multiple defenders hitting him at once, only for Brown to keep driving forward like nothing happened. What made him even scarier was that he never seemed to tire. While others slowed down as the game went on, Brown stayed relentless. By the fourth quarter, defenders weren't just worn out, they were broken. In just 9 seasons, he led the league in rushing 8 times and retired at the peak of his dominance, leaving fans to wonder how much more punishment he could have delivered if he had played longer. But if Jim Brown bullied defenses with raw power, the next man on this list brought fear through his modern-day ferocity, an intensity that earned him a reputation as one of the last true enforcers of the game. If you ever wanted to know what pure rage looks like in a football uniform, just watch James Harrison's highlight reel. Harrison didn't just hit people, he detonated them. Undrafted, undersized, and overlooked, he played like a man who took every slight personally. Every snap was payback. Playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers during the height of their defensive dominance, Harrison became the living embodiment of intimidation. His workouts were the stuff of legend, flipping 1,800-pound tires, doing pull-ups with 100 pounds strapped to his waist. And that power showed up on Sundays. Ask any receiver who dared cross the middle during those Steelers years, they'll tell you they could feel Harrison before they even saw him. One of his most iconic moments came in Super Bowl 43. With the Cardinals driving just before halftime, Harrison intercepted Kurt Warner and returned it 100 yards for a touchdown, the longest play in Super Bowl history. But what people remember most isn't the run, it's how many bodies he left behind on the way to the end zone. He flattened anyone who tried to touch him, collapsing into the end zone like a tank finally out of fuel. Harrison wasn't just feared for his hits, he was feared for his silence. He rarely smiled, rarely talked trash. He didn't need to. That 1,000-yard stare under the black visor said it all. This wasn't a game to him, it was combat. And even years after his retirement, that image, Harrison standing over a fallen quarterback, helmet tilted, eyes locked, remains one of the scariest sights in NFL history. Reggie White wasn't scary because he was dirty. He was scary because he didn't need to be. Known as the Minister of Defense, White was a walking contradiction. A soft-spoken preacher off the field and an unstoppable force of nature on it. At 6'5", 300 pounds, he had the strength of a lineman and the agility of a linebacker, which made him nearly impossible to block. His trademark move, the hump, was simple, brutal, and humiliating. He'd get his hands on an offensive lineman, lift him clean off his feet, and toss him aside like a rag doll. Grown men weighing over 300 pounds looked helpless trying to stop him. Quarterbacks knew the sound of Reggie White's footsteps, and they prayed not to hear them. But what made him truly terrifying was his relentlessness. He didn't care if it was the first snap or the last drive. White came with the same violent precision every single play. He racked up 198 career sacks, second most in NFL history, but what that number doesn't show is how many plays he completely destroyed before the ball could even develop. Off the field, he'd quote scripture and talk about faith. On the field, he'd baptize quarterbacks into the turf. Reggie White didn't just dominate the game, he made you believe that God himself might have been rooting for the defense. Most running backs make defenders miss. Earl Campbell made them regret trying. In the late 1970s and early 80s, Campbell turned the Houston Oilers offense into a highlight reel of human demolition. His thighs were bigger than most people's waists, his shoulder pads looked like body armor, and once he got moving downhill, stopping him was like trying to stop a freight train with your bare hands. He didn't juke, he didn't dance, he just ran through you. Linebackers described the pain of tackling him as like getting hit by a car you didn't see coming. Even his own teammates admitted that practice drills with him felt like punishment. One of the most infamous moments of his career came against the Rams in 1978. Campbell took a handoff, broke through the line, and ran over half the defense on his way to the end zone. His jersey was literally ripped off his body mid-run, and he still scored. That play became the perfect metaphor for his career. Unstoppable, raw, and unapologetically violent. But here's the dark truth. That style came with a cost. By the time he retired, Campbell could barely walk. He'd given everything to the game, every ounce of muscle, every bit of pain tolerance. But in his prime, nobody, and I mean nobody, was more terrifying with the ball in their hands. Now for the surprise name, the one you probably didn't expect. Now when you think of the most terrifying players in NFL history, you might picture linebackers or defensive ends. But one safety changed that narrative forever. Steve Atwater. Playing for the Denver Broncos in the late 80s and 90s, Atwater wasn't just a safety, he was a guided missile. He hit like a linebacker, moved like a corner, and carried himself like a man who enjoyed punishing people. His hits weren't just highlights, they were statements. The play that defined his career came on Monday Night Football in 1990. The Broncos were playing the Kansas City Chiefs, and Christian Okoye, known as the Nigerian Nightmare, was the most feared power back in the league. Nobody wanted to tackle him, but Atwater didn't care. On one snap, Okoye came barreling through the line, full speed, and Atwater met him head-on. The collision was seismic. Okoye went backwards, flat on his back, and the crowd exploded. For the first time, the Nightmare had met someone scarier. What made Atwater so terrifying was his unpredictability. Quarterbacks never knew when he was coming, receivers didn't know from which angle, and running backs quickly learned that open space didn't mean safety. He wasn't the loudest, he wasn't the dirtiest, but when he hit you, you remembered it. Atwater was the last of a dying breed, a true enforcer in the secondary who made the game feel dangerous. And even now, decades later, players still talk about that hit on Okoye as one of the most violent moments in NFL history.